Hi, everybody. This is Chief Slayer of MC coming at you live from Epic Ever, and today I'm gonna build Wave's home. Yeah, technically it's home. Yeah, he's actually one of the friends of our soon-to-be named hero. If you continue listening to the story, you'll understand that eventually our hero gets a name. Well, a new name. She currently has a name, but this name. So this name she currently has is, well, she's called Pup. Um, that's because her first name she lost due to a very, well, you already know, because if you had heard the first part of the story, you would understand why. Well, she lost her name due to a giant mistake that she did and basically wound up losing territory for hunting. Well, this special territory is for hunting caribou, and it's their main meal during the winter because there's like so much caribou that it's like ridiculous how many caribous there are. And they're not just your normal, average, ordinary caribou that you have now. This is like a different world, and they have much larger prey because you got to think of the status of how big a dire wolf is, and then like add that to the animals that are around them as well. And these are fantasy wolves. They're not your everyday, ordinary, average wolves. So if you're thinking they're the normal, average, everyday, ordinary wolves, well, they're not. You have to think more along the lines of animated version wolves that can move around and talk and do stuff with their bodies and things. But they are also still technically still wolves. So they move on 4 feet and walk around and stuff. They do have, however, advantages of technology, sort of technology. And what I mean by that is that the technology is like campfires and things like that. Yeah, they can make them. Why not? I mean, if they can move around like animated wolves, then why couldn't they walk around like, you know, and create fires and things? I mean, you watch Disney, you've seen some wolves. Normally, their behaviors are not the same as that. So, I mean, okay, well, there you go. That's the example of how my wolf pack works. They also live in a quote large kingdom, but that's not really a kingdom. We're not calling it that because it's not a kingdom per se. Yeah, so they basically live in a really large territorial plane of stuff. That's why we're creating the camp as big as we are, because it not only houses the wolves that live there, it houses the king that's in charge of the wolves, because there's like, quote, King Alpha. He's like the most adapted leader there is. Oh, if you're wanting to know what's happening in the video, well, that's easy. We're just making a pathway down to Wave's home. Yeah. That way we can get from the other part of the family dens to Wave's particular area. Wave's particular area, he lives near a stream. His father's a fishing wolf, a wolf that basically does a bunch of fishing. No, they don't use a stick and jump in the water and you know, stuff. They actually hunt just like, well, wolves would normally hunt. They go in the water and they jump in there and they watch their prey and then they grab it and then they, you know, take it back to shore and stuff. That's why their most easiest prey to get is salmon, because there's so much of it. They just have to be careful because there are bears. Bears are quote monsters for these particular wolves. And like I said, they're not your normal, everyday, ordinary, average wolves. So that also means that the predators, or bad people, because it is a book, I am writing a book, I'm also making it into like an audio version of it. It's slow going. The process is very slow going. I am currently at chapter 12 in the whole being voiced at the moment. So if you were wondering why the story hasn't been created, well, this is why the story hasn't been created. It's still ongoing, and the process is very slow, unfortunately. So right now, we are just making the scenes using Minecraft. It may not be 100% accurate, but it is what I foresee that the world looks like. But in the story, you'll probably see something completely different. And yeah, it might be completely different because at the time of writing the story versus the time of making the sceneries and stuff, they're going to be different. I mean, a lot of details and stuff changes over time when you read the book. And the main stuff that stays is that there's a wolf and she is young and she is learning how to be a part of a pack. At the moment, what you have gotten to, if you've read the first part of the story, is that our young hero is very outspoken and she's very defiant when it comes to the rules because of the way that she has been, quote, learned how to grow up. She doesn't have a mom and a dad, so she doesn't know that there is more to a pack than just what she sees and, you know, hears and, you know, other stuff. Because the main wolf that helps her grow in the Pauling den is Talon. He is the oldest of all the Paulings, and at age 12 weeks, they leave the den of the Pauling den and start mentoring with their mentor. So at the time that he is officially called a howling once they get a mentor. The mentor basically teaches them the roles that they'll be playing. Okay, maybe not the roles that they're playing. The roles that they will be taught will be either an alpha role or an omega role. And basically that just means that they will be going through the process of what they want to be when they grow up. As they get older, they get the choice of becoming either an alpha warrior or an omega warrior or a healer. It just depends on what they feel suited for. So anyway, our young hero is basically going through that right now with Wolfgang in the story at the beginning. Her name is Thistle, and Wolfgang is basically her mentor. Now, we have to remember that our hero is not the same age as all the other wolves. So she's more outspoken, more, you know, she can become angered easily and doesn't have control of her emotions like the older wolves, the older Paulings. She just doesn't have that ability because she's still young. So you got to remember that she is still young. So she's not, quotes, following the rule type wolf. No. Well, because of that, she's actually a very outspoken, brave wolf pup. And yeah, so because of her giant mistake when she goes with Wolfgang to go get, they're actually going on a hunting trip where she's going to become graduated, basically, if she, you know, succeeds through watching and listening and learning, kind of thing. But that's not the case for our young hero. In fact, what happens is, because there's these rival wolf pack has literally tried to steal part of the territory from our wolf pack. Chief is the king, and he is and he is basically telling these wolves to get off our turf or we're gonna rip you to shreds. Well, our young hero comes trotting along with her mentor and not really listening to said mentor, so you can imagine what happens when a child doesn't listen to its parent and it's running across the street, right? Okay, well, that's basically what's happening. She's getting herself put into a position where, it's not going to turn out good. So she becomes a bargaining chip for the rival pack. I mean, come on. But what's going to happen is you got this young little pup who wants to try and show off that she can be an alpha and is born to be an alpha warrior. That she's going to do what she's going to do to try and prove her status. And it doesn't end well. In fact, it ends poorly. Very poorly. To the point that it's like, really? What? Are you kidding me? And the reason for that is that she's just a very young, outspoken wolf. She thinks, she's gotten away with, being angry before and able to, because she was in the polling den. They let her get away with stuff because they're not there to teach her. They're there to just help the parents, because it's like kind of like a daycare / kindergarten class. It's not there to teach things like don't do that, don't do this. So yeah, our young hero has to go through a lot of learning. And unfortunately, that learning consists of being grabbed by the neck of a rival leader and either giving our quote leader the option to allow her to continue living, or, well, you're fighting for territory. You're gonna have to either give up the life of a person, or you're gonna have to fight to keep said person alive, or back down and save said person. It's basically that terminology that Spock says. If you are all Star Trek fans, you know exactly what he says. I can't quote the words right now, but saving the life of many and all that stuff over the one is useless. But he saves the one life, risking the territory. But it's a pup, and he's not going to just let it. Anyway, so the king backs down, allowing the other king to release our hero into our king's custody, basically. And that is the big mistake that she did. She basically allowed our king to become seen as weak. Because you don't give up territory. If you give up territory, it shows that you're weak. And if you're weak, then you're easily able to be taken down, basically. And the rival king sees it. And he is smug as all get out, because he's a rival king, come on. Who wouldn't be smug if their territory was like, ha ha ha, I have your land now, So, after that happened, our hero loses her original name and becomes known as Pup. When Wolfgang talks to our king, you already know his name. His name is Chief. When Wolfgang talks to Chief, what happens is Wolfgang ends up going back after leaving our hero with the king, basically. Our king, not the bad guy's king. And he goes back to, well, basically give his life up for the land. He will fight whatever he has to do. It doesn't matter. He's going to do it because the pack means more. And if they starve, it's not good. So, and he doesn't want that to happen. So he goes back to the rival king and he basically sits in front of the king and says, I'm not leaving until you get out of here. And the rival king goes, what? Are you kidding me? Get the heck out of here. But at the same time, the rival king is like, well, you got some spunk. Let's see where this goes. He's really willing to give up his life. So they have an argument. It basically ensues. You'll know more about that particular chapter later on when I get it posted. For now, I'm just gonna scratch the surface. Anyway, he ends up getting the territory back from the rival king. Half of the territory. Not the whole territory, but half of the territory. And that's enough for both of the wolves' kingdoms in order to survive the winter. So because of that, Wolfgang is then given half the land and goes back to his king and tells him what has happened. The king then realizes that Wolfgang cares about this pack just as much as he cares about the pack. Now, if you want to know why the king is so the way he is, you would have to go and understand that he had a lot happen to him in his own self. And he's actually debating whether or not to continue leading the pack because he doesn't trust anybody anymore as much as he used to. So when he sees that Wolfgang would have given up his life in order to save the pack, he gives him the ultimate title because Chief doesn't have any heirs. He does not have any heirs. His one heir is actually dead, passed away. But you'll learn more about her later. Yes, because if I give that away, then you're going to be like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. It's not going where you think it's going because just because he had an heir doesn't necessarily mean that said heir was going to be allowed to be the next in line. I mean, there's a lot more involved than you realize, but it could have meant that, yes. And also no. So, I mean, it's complicated, to say the least. But basically, his quote heir would have been passed away, so it doesn't matter anymore. He has no others, no other heirs after that particular wolf. So Chief is basically alone. He has a friend who's named Granite. They are the same age, and when Chief steps down, Granite will step down as well. Because Granite and Chief are the same age, that's when they give their titles to a different wolf. Now, normally it would have gone to Chief's second, but she, quote, betrayed him. There's a lot more involved, a lot more issues, but we're not going into detail with that because it's not about him and his issues yet. It's about how our young hero grows up. Now, Wolfgang was her mentor. He is now, quote, the second in command of basically everything. He's also the regent at the moment, if that means anything to anybody. basically, it just means that he is being trained to be king, basically. Yes, because Wolfgang is going to be the next leader. That is why, but you'll learn that later. And now you're going, well, why? I don't understand. Is he even qualified to be this? And actually, yes. The answer is yes. Wolfgang has shown his full that's a word. Anyway, he's shown his full loyalty to the pack. We're gonna go with that word, but I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. And he's shown that he would be willing to give his life up for this pack. It's not something that any wolf would do. There are a handful of wolves, but not any of these particular wolves would just give out their life and sacrifice it, basically. And that's basically what he did. He walked up to the rival king, sat down, and said, I'm not going anywhere, and da da da. See? So ultimately earning him half the territory back. Where then Chief grants him the authority to become his second, which then also gives him the authority to be his quote heir. So Wolfgang was teaching this young hero, our hero, but because of her giant monstrous mistake, he can no longer technically train her because, well, she's lost. Wolfgang's given a decision, a choice, to whether either continue having this pup in their pack or not having it continue living in the pack. And by that, I mean that a mistake this big would have meant that an older wolf would have left the pack, but she being a pup, they can't really just throw her out, you know? And on top of that, she's just a pup. But that doesn't mean anything to the king because he's like, well, you get to decide what you want to do with it. I am done. It's basically scrap meat for him, is what he sees our young hero as. I'm not going to tell you the rest of that. So Wolfgang decides whether or not she gets to live or not live. And by that I mean that, well, let's just say being banished is one thing, but being not around anymore is a whole nother thing. But Wolfgang doesn't do that to our hero. In fact, he does something way less worse. I do say way less worse because it's not as bad as being, dead. Anyway, yeah, I do mean that because it's a lot. If you're wondering what's happening in the video still, we're still creating a way to get to Waves Den. We haven't even created Waves Den yet. But we will. It'll happen and you'll be like, wow. And I'll be like, yeah, see. So anyway. So Wolfgang's given the decision and he decides that she's going to stay and be alive and work really, 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 really hard to earn her place in the pack. He finds ways to basically torture her with chores and yelling at her and other stuff because, well, I mean, let's face it, she wasn't listening to him the first time. Why would she listen to him the second time? So he has to be more firm, more fierce, more aggressive. It's not because he wants to, he really doesn't want to. He really sees her as his own cub, basically, because they're pup, because, well, he saw her when she was young and he immediately was like, it felt like a father figure kind of thing. He was automatically instincts kick in, have to protect this one, teach this one, you know. So he automatically has this feeling for her and wants to protect her and keep her safe. Well, the only way to do that now, unfortunately, is to be more strict and stern with her because you can't risk having her go and getting hurt again. Or, treated like a bargaining chip, risking the entire pack's safety and laws and rules and stuff. So he has a lot to deal with and put on his plate because of our hero. And I do mean hero because she is actually has a really great path in her life. I won't tell you more than that. You'll have to wait for the next upcoming episode to find out more. But in the meantime, Wolfgang has a decision to make, and he keeps making the decision. And eventually, his decision is that she's going to have to come out of the falling den at some point. She's getting too old, whether she's young or old, doesn't matter. The fact is, he thinks that she is too old to be in the den with the Fallings, and he doesn't want to create any more wolves like Cloud, wolves that want to stand up for her and fight for her. He doesn't want that because the one thing he wants to make sure is that our hero learns that not everything is going to go your way just because you think that this is going to happen. Not everything is going to happen just because you want it to happen. What's going to happen is that you're going to learn and it's going to be a pain. I don't care. Basically. I mean, he cares. He cares so much that he has to hide who he is, basically. His entire demeanor changes, his entire character changes completely because he can no longer be that soft, kind-hearted young wolf trying to teach this young wolf to be in charge. I don't mean young wolf. He's not a young wolf. He's actually older. He's gone through 3 trainees already. Right? Was it 3 or was it 2? No, it was 3. I believe it was 3. I could be wrong. I mean, it was a second ago that I wrote that, so either way, he is training her, and she is different from every wolf he's ever trained. And she's different completely all the way around from any other wolf. By this, I mean that she is completely different. Like, you're like, oh my god, but what's wrong with being different? Well, a lot of things in this pack. She is not like every other young wolf. She is completely different. She speaks her mind. She's outspoken. She is, well, obviously, she's defiant. She's strong, unique, and different from most young wolves her age. That would be thanks to Talon. If you think about it, he was the one that basically taught her stuff. because he was the oldest in the den when they were Paulings. So most of this stuff can be traced back to Talon, along with the whole alpha thinking. Yeah. So Wolfgang has to find a wolf that's going to teach her. Problem is, right now, every wolf is like him, and, you know, they don't particularly care for this particular wolf. They're like, why don't you just, uh, she doesn't deserve it. She's lower than anybody. It doesn't matter. And they either ignore her or they pretend that she, you know, or they're strict with her. It depends on the wolf, and it depends on how the wolf perceives her. Well, yeah, she's got a lot of growing to do, but she's young. I mean, young wolves her age know not to do what she's doing. Yeah, a lot of them learn at a very young age not to do what she's doing. They don't usually talk back to their superiors. They don't usually not listen to said superiors. And yeah, so for her, she is very, 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 very unique. And this is why she is our hero. So he has to find a way to teach her to, quote, follow the rules. That the pack isn't just about being an alpha and or omega, because honestly, when she becomes a paw, it wouldn't have made a difference because she could have chosen whatever path she wanted at that point. She didn't know that, and she wouldn't have known that because nobody told her that. If she had been in a den with her mother and father, they probably would have told her that, but she doesn't have one. Henceforth, she doesn't know that that's what would have happened. So for her, learning these things are very important. So he has to find a wolf that's going to train her, because she can't keep staying where she's at. But she can't also be living in a den and not doing anything for the pack. So if she's going to contribute to the pack, she has to become a howling. So Wolfgang's ultimate decision is that he gives her training and necessary growth to Winter. Winter is his best friend, is his loyal friend, and also Winter holds a very, very high status within the pack itself. He's basically third in command if you think about it, but he's a what you would be calling in a military a chief warrant officer. He is able to do the things that most other wolves wouldn't normally do. He's able to tell other wolves what to do and things like that. The only wolf he cannot tell what to do is Hearthvine, the high-ranking healing wolf. She, in fact, does not live in Fern's den. Fern is a healer by choice. And she has her own special, what you would call a clinic. It's basically taking care of the young pups and taking care of the not super injured wolves. There's going to be a scene where they're going to see this one wolf, and he's like super banged up and injured, but he doesn't belong to their pack. And he has been helped. And there's a lot that's going to go into that whole situation, but all we're going to know is that he's hurt. Not telling you more than that, and I'm not telling you how that happens. If you want to know more about that, you just have to wait for the story to come out. But in the meantime, I will tell you about Hearthbind. Hearthbind is, I'll tell you a little bit about Hearthbind. Hearthbind is a Dr. Wolf that is high ranking above most wolves. And what I mean is that because she's a Dr. Wolf, she has a doctor facility, hospital kind of thing set up. And she is set up in the area of where the king is located. Because the new lights might need help birthing their babies. Some of them do, some of them don't. Some situations call for medical emergency. They do not have gurneys and all the medical machine and stuff. They have to kind of just wing it. Or there's a specific wolf that's going to be in that den. We don't know a whole lot about the medical field, but if you knew anything about the medical field, you would know that there is a lot involved. We, however, do not, because we are young and we don't care. Currently don't care, because we're having the time of our lives chasing and having fun. Anyway, that because we're following the young hero. Our young hero is absent-minded, basically, of all things, because she doesn't know about all the extra stuff that's going on in camp, or all the extra areas about camp, because, and I quote, because I'm not telling you. If you want to know more about that situation, you're gonna have to keep waiting for the story to come out, because it's going to get a heck of a lot interesting and a lot more dark, and light at the same time. I mean, you're not gonna see a whole lot of bad stuff happening. I'm gonna try and keep it 100%. Okay, maybe not 100%, like 80%. I'll go with 80%. Quote, being able for little kids to watch too, to a point. I mean, it depends on the adults' preferences and stuff. So if you do have issues and your parents don't like certain things, then I recommend telling them about the story, just in case. I mean, they're wolves. They're hunting. They're gonna, eat things, tackle things. There's a whole situation about that. So if you have parents who don't like things like that, maybe you should let them know that this is what's in the story. And not all the details are written in the specifics of that. So if you are worried about said issues, you don't have to worry that badly. So you are able to listen to it. There's a lot of disciplining and things. Mostly timeouts, and yelling, but we'll continue that section later. Not going to say that right now, because that would be giving away half the story. But there are no details as to what happens. There's a dream sequence where something is mentioned, but that's it. No details have been, quote, mentioned. And in order to know more, you have to just wait for the story to come out, because it's not out yet. Anywho, Wolfgang gives her training to Winter, and Winter holds a very, very high status in the pack. And he's basically chief warrant officer. Silver is an alpha elite. You will learn more about him later. We are not going to get into details with that just yet, because we're not in that area at all. We're not even close to that area just yet. But you'll see it, and it'll be amazing. Well, you won't see it. You'll hear it, and it'll be amazing. Because the amount of detail that goes into it is incredible, about how these wolves work through stuff and grow through things. And it's just, It's a very fulfilled story. Oh, for the continuation of the video, we're putting down lights because the water freezes up in the winter area, because we're apparently in a very freezing cold temperature area and the water freezes constantly. So with the lights, it'll at least prevent the water from freezing to a point where I can actually do stuff in the water. Don't worry, we're gonna lower it down to bare minimum of lights, where it's still bright enough, but you still get the sand. That way we can plant vegetation and growth within the water itself. Anyway, continuing onward, Wolfgang has his own personal issues with our hero. Chief, the king, has a much, much problematic issue with our hero. But we won't know any more about that. You won't know any more about that just yet until the story comes out. It's not ready yet. It's still being processed, and yeah, there's a lot involved. Now, Wolfgang is basically caring too much for our young hero, that he has to be strict and stern with her, because being nice and gentle didn't work. He tried that situation and it did not work for her. He tried explaining, he tried being nice and calm and understanding, and yeah, it doesn't work that way. For her, she just never really understood it, and so he has to be firm and strict and stern with her. And yes, as much as some people hate that fact, the part of it is that, well, she kind of brought it upon herself. I mean, how else is he going to teach her? Right? He can't be calm and nice about it anymore. If he's too calm and nice about it, then yeah, consequence is that she would end up getting hurt. And I don't mean because of them beating her up. I mean because of the fact that she would put herself in more and more and more danger. And danger is not what they want to do. They want to keep her out of danger. She's just a pup. She doesn't know any of this. Again, she doesn't have a family. She's alone. No mother, no father. The wolf that adopted her didn't want to keep her very long. In fact, she even took her own kid to the falling den and left him there until he was old enough to, well, grow up, and then that was it. So, and they had to basically adapt. However, she taught her pup the rules and stuff and what was expected and learning and things like that. So he knew different. Whisper, our young hero, on the other hand, does not know these rules. She wasn't taught them. It's just, she grows up different than any other wolf because she has nobody that taught her these things. She has to learn now while being and howling and learning stuff. So when Winter takes charge of her, he is like a quote parent. He has her learning things that a Pauling would learn because she breaks one rule. One rule. And that is to listen to everything he has to say no matter what. And because he's in charge. He's like, I say the rule, you follow it, and that's that. But the first time he and her go out of camp, he's assessing her abilities and stuff, and what she knows and understands. when he finds out that she doesn't understand and thinks that she can do what she did back when she was an actual Howling, or a before Howling, then he's like, no, this isn't gonna work. Not gonna fly. Sorry, ain't gonna happen. So because of the encounter with the lion, he has understood more about how her potential behavior is going to be, and he does not like it. He's not happy about it at all. So in his case, he sends her back to the den after the lion encounter, of course, and she getting help finally. But you know, you get told to go get help, you go get help right away. You don't sit there and go, whatever, I can help and stuff. And it's like, no, you can't. This is a lion. It's gonna rip you to shreds. Get the hell out of here and go get help, kind of thing. Sorry for saying that. Double-edged sticks. Anyway, she didn't get help right away. He got upset. And when, after the whole fighting with the lion issue, well, he literally lets it be known that what she did was not okay. And he's very strict and stern about it. I mean, he's not sugarcoating any of it because, again, her life is in danger. You don't go out of camp and expect that there's not going to be any danger around, no matter what. So the one thing he learned is that she has a hard time listening, even when told to do a simple follow the rules command kind of thing. Because everyone's safety is in danger at that point, not just a few, not just her life. Everybody's life is in danger if she doesn't do that. Because he's right. I mean, if the lion had gone back or had attacked, it could have been curtains for winter. I mean, think about it. If you go fight a lion, what's going to happen? You're going to get eaten. It doesn't matter. You need at least more than one wolf in your entire pack to take down one lion. I mean, gee whiz. Normally, a wolf winter's size could take down one, no problems. They're not as big as a caribou would be. So it's fine. But the fact is that her life was still in danger and the pack around them was still in danger. Of course, yeah, there are other ways to protect it if needed, but he wants to make it known that she has to follow the rules that he gives no matter what. It doesn't matter if his life is in danger or not. He wants it to be known that you do as I say no matter what. The safety of the pack and the safety of you and the safety of me and everyone around you is more important than what you have to say or think. And that's why he is the way that he is with her. He's not cold to her at all, by any means. In fact, if you continue listening to the story, Winter is cold for a reason. It's because of how he is. It's not because of who he is. It's because of how he is. It's the way he was brought up. He if you pay attention to when he tells Cloud about, well, that hasn't come up yet, so you won't know that yet. Anyway, he talks to Cloud and they have a conversation, and in that conversation has to do with something that happened in Winter's past. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I'm not going any further into it. You have to wait for the story. So Winter is not cold because he wants to be cold. He's cold because that's just who he is. That's his personality. That's his demeanor. That's his character. He's a very stern wolf, and he has a very standoffish approach to teaching. He doesn't normally show his feelings, and he never will actually show his true feelings, um, unless something happens in order for him to do so. But if you pay attention to a person who normally doesn't show their emotions, eventually you actually pick up all on their subtle cues and stuff. You notice the little things. Well, that's basically what our hero, is learning. Sorry, I keep ignore that name. You know nothing about that name until the next few chapters. There's a lot involved, but let's just say our hero, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Boom. Anyway, so for our hero to grow up with learning from Winter, he is very particular in how he trains. Depending on the situation, and how bad it is, he will either be nice or he will be not nice. But you won't know it because the way that he interacts and talks and speaks of anything, you would never really know if he was happy, sad, angry, upset, or anything else. Because he tends to hide his emotions under a false blanket of non-emotion showing facade. And that's just how he is. That's how he was raised, that's what he learned, and that is how he has just kept himself emotionally safe. A lot has happened to him. We are not getting into his story because he will not tell it. Anyway, yeah, it's a closed off story. Only Wolfgang knows it, and that's it. We leave it at that. So, Winter isn't cold to be mean. He's cold because he cares. And the only reason Wolfgang decides to add him as her new mentor is because he is literally the only wolf without a um, grudge against her. He doesn't have any emotions towards her mistake. He doesn't, fault her for anything. He has no biased opinion on her whatsoever, unlike the pack and the rest of the group. So, and when Wolfgang doesn't want our hero to grow up being despised and hated and tortured by other wolves just because they don't like her because of the one mistake. He wants her to grow up and to outshine everybody, basically. So that is Wolfgang's story. And I hope it sheds some light on why he is the way he is. And have a good one. And I'll see you in the next one. We will be talking more about Winter.